Math time. Okay, the trick today is multiply and divide by 4. This comes up all the time, and this trick is actually quite obvious, but it's effective. Most people don't actually do this, yet you should. It's much quicker, and you can do this in your head. So let's start with just a simple problem. Say you had 4 times 16. This one's not too bad. You could try to times 4 by 10, 4 by 6, or try to just times it by 4 in your head, but you could take 16 and double it, which is 32, and then double it again, which is 64, and that's your answer, 64. Because when you multiply by 2 twice, that is the same as multiplying by 4 once. So it's a quite obvious trick, but it's very effective. Most people can double numbers quite quickly. Let's see how this works. Okay, so we're going to take 85 here, we're going to double it, and that is 170, and then we're going to double it again, and we get 340, so that is my final answer, 340. Okay, so take 53, times it by 2, and you have 106, and then you times it by 2 again, and you get 212. Okay, this one we have a decimal, and like all my videos, I encourage you guys to ignore the decimal, and this is just a times 4 problem. So we're going to take 306, we're going to double it, which is 612, then we're going to double it again. This is 24, when you double 6, you get 12. So I'm going to write that up here. 1, 2, 2, 4. Now I have to use either estimation, or I can think that I changed this number, I times it by 10, and so I need to divide by 10 on my final answer, because here I times by 10. So dividing by 10 would move the decimal here. I could also figure that out because 0.4 is 40%. And 40% of 306 is around 120 something. It wouldn't make sense to be 1,224 or 12. That's too low. So this one makes sense, around 40% of 306. Okay, so we're going to ignore the decimal, just like before, and we're going to ignore the extraneous zeros. This is like 15 times 4. This one's small enough, you don't even need to do the trick, but you could. You could double 15 to make 30, and double it again, and you have 60. And now you have to think about, does this make sense? Well, 15, I always like to do percents. 15% of 400 is pretty small. 10% of 400 is 40. It's going to be a little bigger than 40. 60 makes sense. If you really don't like to think about it that way, you always can take a look at here. To make 15, I had to times this by 100. That's how I got 15. And then to make this 4, I had to divide by 100 to make this 4. Because timesing by 100, then dividing by 100 essentially cancels itself out. It's like doing nothing. Then I know that just 15 times 4 is going to give me my final answer. I don't need to worry about the decimal. It is where it should be. Now let's do divide by 4. And as you guessed it, when you divide by 4, that is the same thing as dividing by 2 twice. And cutting a number in half is something that is quite easy to do in your mind. So let's do a straightforward example. We can do 80 divide by 4. I know you could probably do this one without the trick, but you take 80, you cut it in half, and then you cut it in half again to give you 20. So this equals 20. Here we have 380 divided by 4. So I'm going to cut 380 in half, and I'm going to make that 190. And then I cut this guy in half, and that becomes 95. Final answer. Okay, so we're going to ignore the decimal. This is just 92 divided by 4 is the calculation. And in your head, see if you can do it right now. 92 divided by 2, you cut it in half, you get 46, and then you cut it in half again, and you get 23. So that's what I'm going to write up here, 23. Now I got to think about the decimal. Well, I'm dividing 9 by 4, so my answer is going to be a little bigger than 2. That's pretty clear to see, so I know the decimal's got to go here, 2.3. 0.2 doesn't make sense, and 23 definitely doesn't make sense. 17.6 divided by 4, take out the decimal, 176 divided by 4. You cut this guy in half, and that becomes 88. And then you cut 88 in half, and you get 44. And then you have to put the decimal back. This divide by 4 has to be a little bit bigger than 4, because 20 divided by 4 equals or equals 5, and 16 divided by 4 equals 4. It's got to be in between those two. So 4.4 is the only place the decimal makes sense. This when we have two big numbers, and again, it's useful to ignore these zeros and then think about your answer at the end. To where the decimal goes, we have to add more zeros. This is essentially, it's just 98 divided by 4 here. So you take 98 and you cut it in half, and you get 49. And then you want to cut 49 in half, and this is like cut 50 in half, but then it's 1/2 less than that. And you cut 50 in half, you get 25, so it is going to be 24.5. And then you have to look, does this answer make sense? And 400, it's going to go into 980 a little more than 2 times, definitely not 24. So my decimal actually is going to go right here. Okay, just to recap, this is the trick, right? You double twice when you multiply by 4, and you cut in half twice when you divide by 4. If you are not good at doubling and having numbers, you should practice that. Practice it in your head without paper. Check with a calculator to make sure you're doing it right. It's an extremely good skill to have in math and everyday life. All right, see you next time.